Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Embarcadero Delphi and C++ Builder, Great RAD Studio Even Better. This is Kevin Askew, Senior Sales Manager of Programmer's Paradise TechXtend, and I want to start today just by giving you a little heads up on where we're going as a company. Some of you may have received an email from us, but as you can see from the first slide, Programmers is getting a new name. For nearly 30 years, Programmer's Paradise has served the software development and IT communities with the best selection of software, terrific values, and a commitment to service excellence. Over 30 years, much has changed. From our early focus on developer and database tools, our customers, and the evolution of technology itself led us to extend our solutions focus into infrastructure tools such as virtualization, cloud computing, business continuity, networking, and security. A few years ago, we launched our TechXtend division to serve our customers' demand for total technology solutions, the software, the hardware, and the services to implement them. Many of our customers now know us as TechXtend and rely on us for a broad range of their information technology needs. So in order to continue to serve you even better, we've decided to merge Programmer's Paradise into TechXtend as a single business unit. Over the next few weeks, you'll begin to see changes when you visit our programmers.com website and when you place your order online or through your TechXtend Programmers representative. Some changes are already taking place. You can now order hardware on programmers.com, and your order confirmations and invoices carry both the Programmers and TechXtend logos. When the merger is complete, the Programmers and TechXtend websites will be combined as TechXtend.com. Your web searches for Programmer's Paradise will be redirected to the new site. You as a customer don't have to do anything. You'll still get the great service, business value, and selection that you've received from our separate divisions. All your account records, logins, order history, email subscriptions, etc. from both Programmers and TechXtend will be available on the new TechXtend.com website. Rest assured that this transition will be seamless to you. We will still be your go-to source for software developer tools, and you'll also be able to depend on TechXtend for all of your other IT needs. Programmer's Paradise TechXtend is the leading e-seller of developer and infrastructure tools. We can be found at www.techxtend.com. We are an Embarcadero reseller, and under our ALM worldview falls RAD Studio, JBuilder, etc., and under our database worldview, DB Artisan and ER Studio. We offer team development services around Embarcadero, including assessment, deployment, and migration. In our ALM worldview, we provide industry-leading tools for your end-to-end development needs, including defining, designing, developing, testing, deploying, and managing. Now, without any further ado, I will now turn things over to David I., VP of Developer Relations and Chief Evangelist at Embarcadero for today's webinar. David?
Thanks a lot, and welcome everyone. It's great to have you all online with us, and this presentation is going to cover several of our products that are included inside of RAD Studio, and it ties into a promotion that TechXtend is running, where if you want to purchase Delphi or purchase C++ Builder, you'll simply get RAD Studio for whatever edition that you purchase. So I want to go over RAD Studio and along the way talk about what's specific to Delphi and C++ Builder and Delphi Prism and RadPHP. We'll also do some demonstrations showing the products working with each other, maybe building a web service on the PHP side and consuming it, for example, in C++ or Delphi. And across all of RAD Studio or the individual products, you can build lots of different types of applications. The traditional desktop applications, client-server applications to talk to databases, web and web services, mobile applications with Delphi Prism, multi-tier applications using all sorts of technologies, TCP/IP, DCOM, HTTP, your choice. You can build your applications to access storage that's running inside of a cloud infrastructure. You can even deploy your applications onto cloud servers. Build Facebook applications, build PHP applications. It's about any type of application that you might want to build, graphics intensive, services, console applications, you can build with RadPHP, with RAD Studio. At Embarcadero, we're focused on developer and database tools. So everything that you need to get the job done, connecting to a database, building different kinds of applications, we've got the tools for you. So whether you focus part of your time on architecting applications, doing data modeling, doing UML object modeling, if you do application or database development, maybe you spend part of your time deep inside stored procedures in a database, then Rapid SQL is a great tool for doing that. Or if you're deep in the code, or maybe sometimes on a certain project, you're the architect and maybe you're a developer, maybe you're the tester, maybe you have to administer the databases as part of your application. Again, Embarcadero, we've got it covered. So for design and architecture, we've got modeling tools for data modeling, business modeling, and UML modeling. Inside of our IDs for Delphi and C++, we also have UML modeling. For application development, Delphi, C++ Builder, RAD Studio, RadPHP, Delphi Prism. For database development, DB Artisan for doing database administration and performance monitoring and updates. Rapid SQL for building up your SQL statements and building and testing and debugging stored procedures and triggers. DB Change Manager keeps track of your metadata across multiple servers. So for developers, think of source code control systems. Think of DB Change Manager as a source code control system for your metadata across servers. So if you want to make sure that you've applied all the SQL updates or updated all the stored procedures across multiple servers, you can do diffs of your different servers, and DB Change Manager will report those that are out of sync and even generate update scripts so that you can bring them back into sync against some golden master. And DB Optimizer, which is a database profiling and performance tuning tool to help you find better, more optimized SQL statements for your database backend, or understand what's going on and in the profile of SQL operations and database operations. And it'll recommend other kinds of things that you do, like adding a secondary index that's not there, or a different SQL statement formulation, or moving the filters as part of a where clause in a SQL statement, moving it up nearer the top of the where clause, so you're only processing through certain amounts or subsets of the database. Interbases are embeddable and workgroup database. It can run as a DLL under Windows. It can run as a desktop server, SQL Server application. It can run on a multi-core server as well. And if you need all the tools, then we have our All Access product, which gives you everything that we make. Embarcadero ToolCloud is our technology for giving you control over the licenses of our products that you use, the delivery and deployment of those products, and then you can use individual products inside of your firewall, or you can use all of them through All Access. So all the license compliance, you don't have to worry about everybody registering everything. The license server that we give you as part of Embarcadero ToolCloud will do all of that for you. It can do monitoring of who's using the tools, letting you know if you need more licenses and things of that kind. It also does version management of all the tools from Embarcadero that you might use, and the ToolCloud server manages that as well. We have a new product called DB Power Studio, which is our database tools put together for either a single database or for all databases. So there's a developer edition that includes DB Change Manager, Rapid SQL, and DB Optimizer. And then the Database Administrator edition adds DB Artisan as well. So it's a great price of all the tools put together. You can choose the Developer Edition or the Database Administrator division. As far as our products for Delphi, C++ Builder, Delphi Prism, and RadPHP, all included in RAD Studio that you get through this promotion that's running through the end of the month. You can build different kinds of applications. So you need GUI, Windows applications, then Delphi and C++ Builder are for you. You need to build web applications, maybe ASP.NET and PHP running on different operating systems that PHP runs on, Linux, Windows, and whatever. You can build all those. Build web services and connect through web services in all of our tools as well. Talk to any database that you want through a common interface, or if you've got a specific provider on Windows, we support ADO. PHP supports ADO-DB. And again, wherever your data is, wherever you want to put your servers, we have access and support inside of our products to make it so that you can build all those kinds of applications. On the client side, our vision as we deliver products today and in the future is support for any input. So today it's keyboard and mouse and touch if you've got a Windows 7 or multi-touch device, tablet, PC, or whatever. For mobile, it might be GPS, it might be some kind of biometric device, it might be voice input. So regardless of what the input is, our goal is to provide you the tools to build rich client applications that run today on Windows and in the future that will run with the same sets of source code on Macintosh, on Linux, and wherever else client applications want to run in the future, iPads, iPhones, and so on. Access any kind of service, whether it's a COM object, a SOAP server, a .NET web service of some kind. It might be some of the social networks or applications that are running in the cloud that have APIs. Maybe it's a call through RESTful web services, which a lot of the systems like Amazon and eBay and others are supporting now as a lightweight way of calling web services. And again, any storage, whether it's a SQL database or a NoSQL database or some XML or something else that's out there, making sure you can build your client applications in RAD Studio that talk to all of those. And again, deploy them where you want. A tablet PC, a touch PC, a mobile device, a kiosk type application that you see in airports and things of that kind. On the server side, it's allowing you to build server-based applications in PHP or in Delphi or C++ Builder, Delphi Prism. Put those in the servers that you want today for Windows and with PHP for Linux, and then in the future on other platforms as well. Exposing the interfaces as methods that you can call from any client. So today, Windows, PHP, .NET clients, iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch through Delphi Prism and Mono Touch today, but in the future, Macintosh, Linux, BlackBerry, Android, next generation of iOS, all of that in our development environment for building applications for any types of clients that talk to all the services and storage that you might need in your applications. That's our vision moving forward. We're going to continue to deliver on that. What's helping us get to some of this is investments that we've made recently. Our RadPHP product, we've acquired the company that makes that product, and they're employees of our company now. And another company called KSDev. KSDev had all sorts of high-end graphics platform support for OpenGL, for vector graphics, for Direct 2D, Direct 3D. We're taking all of that technology and we're building a next generation cross-platform application platform for developers with using our products. So lots of different projects going on. We're working on 64-bit versions of our products to get to 64-bit Windows. We're working on cross-platform application development and server-side development. We're working on the next generation of our developer community. We're extending our VCL components into new technologies running on Windows. We're also continuing to add to our multi-tier solution that we call DataSnap to allow DataSnap servers to run on Windows and eventually run everywhere and be able to connect to those DataSnap servers through HTTP or TCP or through REST and just make function calls. You're an application developer. You call functions in your own program. You should be able to call functions that are running in DataSnap servers. We do that today. You'll see examples of that and be able to do more of that in the future. We're working on next generation compilers for our Delphi and C++ products that will get us to additional platforms and additional chipsets as well. And also the ability, if you've got a mobile device, to connect to code that you're going to build that runs on Windows, that runs on Linux, runs on Macintosh, and eventually the ability to build native code applications on those smart devices as well. And ultimately, for our Delphi language, we're the only ones that make the Delphi language. We're going to make sure over the coming years that you'll be able to use the Delphi language everywhere, whether it's an Intel chip, an ARM chip, whether it's a Windows platform or some other operating system. We'll have Delphi compilers for everywhere that anyone cares about as it relates to operating platforms. So RAD Studio XE, as I mentioned, it includes Delphi XE, C++ Builder XE, Delphi Prism, and RadPHP. And if you buy or upgrade to Delphi XE or C++ Builder XE, we'll give you RAD Studio XE. That's the promo. There's a link on the TechXtend website. So if you think about the way software is being built today, there's lots of modern capabilities everyone is just relying on now. Refactoring, unit testing, version control, Unicode support, all the things that pop up help hints as you're typing in code, live templates, error insight, help insight, parameter insight, all those things you're used to are inside of our IDs and inside of the tooling that we provide. So if you're using a certain Agile method, whether it's extreme programming or Scrum, you'll find lots of the capabilities that fit within those methodologies that you're trying to follow. Inside, for our products, we use Scrum for our methodology for building our products as well. So for Delphi XE, new capabilities for tooling, for cloud development and cloud deployment, you see that in the demos, and more enhanced capabilities inside the ID, like you just hit F6 or Control period, start typing. ID Insight will give you all the choices that you have at that time. So you never have to leave the keyboard, no clicking on menus unless you want to. Debugging support, UML code metrics and audits, DataSnap multi-tier, using JSON and RESTful web services or TCP and HTTP. We can target everything from Windows 2000 and beyond, so you can still build applications that run on those different versions of Windows. C++ Builder, same. It's a version integration, change management in the ID, cloud development and deployment, the same tooling and capabilities. More enhancements, the C++ 0x draft standard is close now to being complete. It's in the final approval phases. We're continuing our support for that, for the latest in the standard runtime libraries and the Boost community sets of libraries as well. Support for all the databases you want to build. You can build DataSnap servers in C++ or in Delphi and deploy them wherever you have Windows desktops or servers running. DataSnap XE is a multi-tier technology that we use that allows you to use different protocols. You're not limited like in our old days to COM and DCOM. You can just simply use TCP and HTTP. And you can have clients that are built in Delphi, C++, Prism, PHP, and JavaScript, and we have proxy generators for those languages. You can create your own proxy generator for other languages as well. You'll see Delphi, you'll see DataSnap in the demo portion. Lots of additional tools that are included in XE. AQTime by SmartBear, the standard edition for doing profiling and memory debugging of your applications. For automated builds, Final Builder is available as part of our install. CodeSight is a runtime logging and error detection system, and we have CodeSight Express that's included. Beyond Compare allows you to do really complex differences in visual windows inside the ID for your source code. 2D and 3D pie charts from Schema in T-chart. Lots of TCP/IP low-level components. An install utility is create your own MSIs or your own installs. A reporting set of components with Rave reports from Nevrona. Lots of images, icons, cursors, bitmaps from Glyphix as well, so you can have modern look and feel for your buttons and your applications. For PHP, use the PHP language, use a similar environment like Delphi and C++, a visual drag and drop. You'll see that in the demo. Lots of pre-built components for building applications with Google Maps, with Facebook, with buttons, all AJAX supported all the way through, so you get the modern browser and or client-based applications that then connect to your PHP server wherever it's running. Lots of components, as I mentioned, grids, database access, buttons, checkboxes, all the things you're used to if you're thinking about Windows development. In this case, you'll build this in PHP and it will send the right HTML and the right CSS and the right JavaScript to your client or your browser client, and those visual components will show up. And then as you click on the button, you can have a client-side event handler and a server-side event handler for components that have events associated with them. Delphi Prism, everything you can build in .NET. So parallel extensions, .NET 4.0 support, language enhancements. You can copy and paste C# code that you find inside the editor or in the project. It'll convert it on the fly into Delphi Prism code. Delphi Prism is a Delphi language that's been enhanced for the capabilities of .NET. You can build every kind of application, Silverlight application, WCF, ASP.NET, WFC, everything that you see in .NET you can use Delphi Prism to build, as well as it supports the ability to build iPhone and Android applications through MonoTouch and MonoDroid, which are open source projects originally from Novell, now part of Xamarin, an open source technology company. So everything you might think about, database connectivity, using .NET providers, all of that is provided for. We use the Visual Studio Shell IDE, but if you have Visual Studio, Delphi Prism install will install an existing version of Visual Studio as well. And again, if you want to deploy to Windows or Windows Server or Linux via Mono, or Apple with MonoTouch and also with the Mono runtime, you've got your choices. Prism will come with 3 ways of doing the IDE. Visual Studio, Mono developed for Windows, and Mono developed for Macintosh. So depending on the desktop you use and the hardware you use, you can do cross-development in Delphi Prism as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a bunch of demos, and I've recorded this earlier today so that I don't make any mistakes and get caught up. We'll do that, and then we'll come back and talk about the promos that TechXtend is running, and also we'll have time for questions at the end as well. So in this, I'm going to show a little bit about the different IDEs and the way the tooling works, but then move right into the types of applications you can build. For example, build a calculator service in C++ and call it from Delphi. Build a PHP web service and call it from another language. Build a DataSnap server in Delphi and call it from PHP client, from a JavaScript client, from a Delphi client. So all these kinds of demos will be coming in. You know, we'll look at storage, so accessing Microsoft Azure storage of message queues, tables, and blobs. We've got examples for that, not only in the demos here, but on our websites as well. Deployment to Amazon, and we have lots of different videos that are out there in our RAD in action area. So all you have to do is just go to your browser, go to Google and search RAD in action, and it'll get you to a page that has, I don't know, 12, 20, 30 different kinds of videos for the different types of applications. Maybe you're looking at building. Maybe it's Android talking to PHP, or it might be a Facebook application, or you need to build some REST servers that you can call from different languages and different systems. All of those kinds of applications and demos are easily built, and we'll take a look now at some of those demos, and we'll come back for some additional discussion. So hold on just a moment while I switch over to sharing an application. And it's there. And let's see. For C++ and Delphi, RAD Studio XE gives you a common environment. Hold on, let me make sure I'm on the right. Let's do it this way. Let's share a desktop. Uh-oh, wrong desktop. Okay, one last time. Let's go do this one. There we go. For C++ and Delphi, RAD Studio XE gives you a common environment, you know, with the welcome page and project manager and wizards and palettes. You could hit F6 and just start typing. We've got IDE Insight for the whole thing. So if I want to build a Delphi VCL project, for example, then we can do that world. You just start typing, and it says what you can do at that point. You can also go to the object repository, file new. Let's go to other, hover over some of the different ones, and it'll tell you down below, this builds a control panel app, a Dynalink library, an MDI application, a VCL form application, and so on. So, you know, if you're not sure what are some of these wizards and what will they do for you, here's a DataSnap client module. Here's a REST application, for example, that's support for REST, where you can have you can use JavaScript to JSON to invoke the server-side methods. Here's just building a REST client module. Here's a DataSnap server. You could use a web broker server where you don't need to have
a web server, an IIS, for example. You can just have it built into your executable, deploy it, and use it. We'll see that in a little bit as well. Now, I've built some applications, but let's just start with a file, new. I think most of you know how to build a Windows application, talk to a database and so on. You drag and drop components along that way. Let's go now and take a quick look at RadPHP. So here's RadPHP, again, structure window, object inspector, project window, tool palette for things that you do. You can say file new, I want to build a PHP application, so we could put a button down, for example, and put an edit box down and a list box or a label, right? We want to double click and it'll bring up the event handler for button click. We also, in RadPHP and the RCPL, the RAD Studio component library, you can specify events on the server side and you can specify JavaScript events on the client side. Again, Ajax is built-in support. And it's almost pixel per pixel. I'm looking at my source code, so the structure window is there. I can go to the design, and I see the components. I can easily choose those. I can also see a history view of changes that I might make. Let's go to, here's the Visual Studio shell. When I say File, New, Project, or Solution, for Delphi Prism, we have support for all the different kinds. WPF application, Silverlight application, ASP.NET application, console application, WPF, all of the things for the web, ASP.NET, Silverlight, for OS X mono and for cross-platform mono, including console applications, GTK Sharp, using the GTK framework and set of components, and a Windows Form application, again, built on mono. So all the wizards that you would expect and project templates to get started. And the fourth ID that runs on Windows that's part of RAD Studio is mono develop. So we can just say File, New, bring up a solution. You could say for Delphi Prism, for example, we want to have a GTK Sharp, a nice GUI project, a console, on ASP.NET. Moonlight is the open source version for Silverlight that's being developed, and we can use unit testing as well. Okay, so 4 IDs. There's actually a 5th ID. There's a mono develop that runs on Macintosh OS X as well. I won't be showing that today, but it's used in the other webinars focused on Macintosh and iOS development. So let's do this. Let's go back and let's open up a web service application. Well, first let's go and look at an Ajax application written in RadPHP. I've got a button here. I've got these little grabbers. We've got alignment help to try to align different components in. So I've got a button here. I've got a label where I'm going to display some text. We can lay it out and drag it around. We can go and get other components. We could put a memo down at the bottom and maybe put some text in the memo, or take what appears here and put it down there. We could put in a bunch of other components, lots of other components, including jQuery components like a slider, a notify bar, password. We've got specific components for specific databases, but we also have the data access component that goes through ADO-DB, so whatever drivers that you have for other databases you can use from PHP as well. So here we have MySQL, Interbase, Oracle, database components pre-built for you. Google Maps down at Facebook. Here's a Facebook application component, CAPTCHA, chat invite, the feed, your feed coming from your wall, an RSS feed. You want to put a like button, a like box. Here's the activity feed, the live stream. These are all just drag and drop components for building Facebook. We also can hook into DataSnap servers that are built in Delphi and C++ components for those. Web services, here's a web service. We can also consume web services, so you can have a PHP server application serving up a beautiful looking rich client that's getting some of its functionality by calling from the server to a web service that's implemented somewhere else, like in Amazon or eBay or in your own applications. So let's just run this application. RadPHP also comes with a profiler and with an integrated debugger. In this case, I'm just going to run and show a little bit about this application. So we'll click it, and it said, okay, we clicked, and it did an Ajax call and hello from Ajax. So let's see what happened in that event. If I double-click on the button, it's going to bring up my event handler. So my event handler in this case is going to come up and display some information. Now on that button, I've got an event on the server side called button one click, but I also have a client side event called button one JavaScript click. And in there, all I'm going to do is I'm going to say, for button one, make an AJAX call, and which function am I going to execute on the server? I'm going to call the button one click on the server. All right, so AJAX call, or in this JavaScript handler, we could put just JavaScript code that would access the local elements of the page in the browser. So if you've got a button, it's got a name, just like I put a button down in HTML, for example, and I can access those by embedding JavaScript code. But I could also just use this AJAX call function that will do an AJAX call back to the button. And that's what you saw, right? You saw no screen refresh, no refresh this way. It made an asynchronous call to get some strings back to display this text on the button and this text on the in the label, right? And that's what was done in this code. We said this, which is the instance pointer of the form, button one, caption, set its caption to be a string that takes the date and time and sends it back. And the same thing, it sets the caption of the label below from AJAX and sets the color to some random color between black and white, right? So that's just a basic kind of application that you can do using the visual design surface, using server-side and client-side events. Let's open up a web service. So here's my web service written in RadPHP. I've got a service component. I give it a name, my web service. I give it a namespace. I'm going to run on a local host, a schema target, and I set the service name. And then underneath in the code, I implement the services that I want to provide. So I've got a function here called service echo, and the other function I've got is called string array. And I can put any other functions as well that I want to expose as interfaces for my SOAP server or web services application in this case. But I'll just leave the two that are there right now, service echo and string array to int array. So we'll run this application. So now it's sitting up here. It gives us that single component will take all the interfaces and it'll display a nice sort of control panel or dashboard for me. Here, if I click on the two functions that are defined, it shows me the input type. It takes a string. The output type is also a string. What its namespace, its transport, and so on. Same with string array. It takes an array of strings and it's going to return an array of integers. All right. And I can also look at the WSDL. And so here it is. This is the WSDL that defines all the interfaces, the string array to int array, and the service echo operations using the operation tag in the WSDL. Okay. All right. So let's leave that running. Sorry, I closed it. Let's leave it running. And I'm going to come back over to RAD Studio. And let's close this application. Now, if I want to import the WSDL from that service, we've got a wizard that allows us to do the importing of the WSDL. It could be a file, it could be a URL, for example, and we could just go and choose that. But I've already built a C++ client. So on the C++ client, I've imported, I said file, other WSDL import for C++. So under the web services, I did the WSDL import, and then it asked me for the port, and there was the last time I pasted, which is my localhost 3571 is the port for this debugging instance, and the SOAP server, and then the WSDL link was here, right? So we look at that link, it tells me that it's got a name, and I can use it. I've already done that, and the end result was a C++ file, which gives me the service port type, and it will get the information to do the connectivity. And then from that, it extracts the service name and the port name, and it does some registration of those types, so I can use them inside my IDE. There's also a header file that gets generated, and here's the interfaces for the SOAP server. Here's the service echo method. It takes a Unicode string, and the string array to int array returns an array of integer, and you pass it an array of strings, right? And here's the type defs for an array of integer and array of string that were generated out from the WSDL that was imported. In my user interface, I've got a button here which will take this edit box and take the string that's returned back from RadPHP and display it on this label. And that's done in these lines of code. I'll create the instance variable for my service by calling get VCL web service port type. I'll store that in RadPHP in service. I'll see if I got a connection, because if the service wasn't running or available, then I don't want my code to crash by trying to call a method that doesn't exist. If it does exist, then I will simply use the PHP service and call the method service echo. That actually will show up when I'm inside the editor, if it finds it. And then I'm going to take the text property of the edit box, and I'm going to store that in the caption property of the label. And I've got a second button here, which is going to take and pass two strings with values of 100 and 200. It's going to, again, connect to the service. And it's going to call the string array to int array, passing the string array, and returning the response into an array of integer. And then I'm going to take each of the response integers, and I'm going to convert them to a string and store them in a list box, right? So let's run this application. So I put in here, hello world, and when I call the web service, I get the string back and I echo it back in the caption of the label. Here I'm going to call send strings of 100 and 200 and get back the integers and then convert them to strings so I can put them in a list box, right? 200. Is it live or is it Memorex? Let's go in here and let's change these strings, and let's go and run them again. And just do the second one, and it should echo back 101 and 202. Okay? So we can use PHP. We want to put web services on a Linux box or wherever PHP runs. And there's PHP runtimes for AS400, for Linux, for Unix, for Macintosh, for Windows, Windows Server, and so on. So wherever there's a PHP runtime, you can use RadPHP to build the application and then deploy it to that target. And since it's a web services interface, we can use Delphi, Delphi Prism, RadPHP, or C++ Builder to build client and server applications that can leverage that web service. All right? Okay. So another thing we could do, let me shut down, make sure we'll stop that web service, and let me come back into RadPHP and close that project. All right. RadPHP has support for Flash. If you want to add all sorts of cool, nice graphic effects to your user interface, I've got a Swift file here. And so when I hover over, notice it does a little kind of highlight animation. This might be a menu bar as part of our user interface. Again, RadPHP has a software Flash component. It's called Flash Object. Okay, so next thing I want to show is some of the things you can do in Delphi Prism. So for example, I can build a Windows application inside of Delphi Prism using the WinForms technology. So we've got a toolbox of components, you know, pointers and menu strips and edit boxes and list boxes and panels and splitters and all these things, list box, list views, labels, checkbox, radio buttons, and so on. We just drag and drop them. Maybe it's a date time picker. You could double click and place it as well. So maybe we have a date time picker that pulls down. Also, we'll have a button here, and we double click on it. It brings up the event handle. I'm just going to, in this case, change the button text to be hello. And then when we want to debug it or run it, we just say run. And we have a button. We have two, I guess I have two date time pickers here, right? So just the same way of thinking about, here's the visual design, here's the code behind using the Delphi Prism language. Maybe it's a web application, ASP.NET application. We want to have just drag buttons on. Here's the toolbox of components that we can put on an ASP.NET type application. We go and run it. It's going to launch the browser. And now we have an application. We can go, use this calendar control. We can click this and change the caption. Let's see what that code looks like. So if we go to the code behind, we've got a button click event that just returns the caption back. So again, the same notion. If you're used to C++ Builder or Delphi, those were the products you were buying. Again, when you upgrade to XE, we'll get you RAD Studio, which will give you a Delphi Prism and RadPHP. All right. And then for Mono Develop, which also includes Delphi Prism, we've got a source code, and we've got a visual designer. So we've got a set of components that let me move this little guy away. That we can, we've got a set of components, event boxes and buttons and horizontal button boxes and notepads, calendars, checkboxes, just all sorts of visual controls that we can drag and drop. Let's put a calendar down here, for example, and let's extend this user interface. So we have a calendar down here that we can use. We can set what month we're looking at and so on. We just say run or debug. And now this is a GTK Sharp application using Mono. We could deploy that application wherever Mono runs as well. Here's our calendar working as we move around. Right? And that was done by just saying file new, right? Whatever the solution might be for the project that you want to build. So it's a Delphi Prism. In this case, it was a GTK Sharp project. We'd say GTK Sharp, give it a name, and say which version of GTK Sharp do we have. I have this 2.12 version. Do we want to add any other capabilities inside of the project? And now we have a simple GTK Sharp application main window. We can start dragging and dropping components down on the design surface. Right? Okay, now DataSnap. Lots you can do in DataSnap. You can build servers inside of Delphi and C++ Builder. You can build clients using Delphi, C++ Builder, RadPHP, Delphi Prism, and JavaScript. So let me go back into RAD Studio, and let's open up this group, which is called the DataSnap Demos group. In here, I have a DataSnap server, and let's go and look at its container. So what is a DataSnap server? We have lots of videos and articles and Pavel's Delphi Labs 11-part tutorial series on everything you can build. Basically, you drop down a DataSnap server component. You drop down a transport, TCP, HTTP, or it might be HTTPS. And that defines the transport of how the method calls and the JSON packets come back and forth. You can have Authentication Manager, which allows you to set up attributes and logins for who has access to the interfaces. And then you can define server classes. Server classes contain the methods. You can set the life cycle for each server class. So invocation server life cycle says when a client connects, executes a command. When the command is done, connection goes away. Server side says that the DataSnap server itself will manage all the clients that connect to it. Third kind is session. So as a client is connected to a DataSnap server, that session stays open, and you can specify how many threads that you want to support through the transport. And you can pool those connections as well so that you don't have to start up new threads all the time. So you set session as the type, as the lifecycle type versus server versus invocation. So let's run this DataSnap server. And what it does is it's got a dashboard where you can do things like add users and define the configuration. It's telling us where our database is. I'm using the interface employee database, for example, in this case. And it has a server log where it logs the connections and the events that take place. Now, back in my project group, I've got a DataSnap client built in Delphi. So let's look at the main form. It's got page control with a lot of different pages on it, like here, calling a server method. So here I'm going to say, for that method, let's go and connect to that server, which is the TDataSnap methods client of my DataSnap server. And then I'm simply going to call, for that instance, I'm going to call a method called getServerDateTime. So where's getServerDateTime defined? Over in the, in my server modules, I've got a set of interfaces like getServerDateTime. So in the public area, you define the functions and procedures that you want to expose from your DataSnap server to your clients. Define their types, and down here define their implementation. So for example, getServerDateTime is simply going to return now, right? Now is the function that returns a tDateTime object with the date and the time. And then that'll get sent over a JSON packet back to the client. The client, we look at it again, the client is going to just display the date and time on the label in the caption. It's going to call date time to string for that server. So that's going to make a TCP/IP JSON call, sending the method name and any parameters. In this case, there's no parameters, right? Over TCP/IP from the client to my DataSnap server, get the result string as a JSON packet coming back, pull it apart, convert it, and then my code says put it in the caption. So let's enable this client and let's run it. First thing is to log in. That'll set what writes, and here's the get date server date and time. There's lots of other methods and interfaces. It could be that I have a provider interface that's going to provide metadata and data to me. So for example, using the client data set and a provider interface to go out to the interface employee table, which gets us country and currency information. Or reading by calling using the DB Express interface over DataSnap to pull the data from the department table, the department number and the name. So let's go and look at that interface. Let's go look at the main form. If we go to the reading data, let's double click on the Get Department button. So here it's going to say, for the department client, we're going to create, from my DataSnap server, we're going to connect to it. Right? And then we're going to say, okay, let's go and call the interface that's called Get Department Order By. So that's this method here, which is defined on my DataSnap server. And I'm going, because here's my client interface from my client to my DataSnap server. And I'm going to call that, set that up as a reader. If it made a connection, then I'm going to read through and pull out from the JSON packet the department number and the department name, and I'm going to add those to that memo. And that's what you saw take place. Then I'm going to free up the reader and then free up the connection from the client to the DataSnap server. Okay? That's what took place. Here, let me run it without debugging. So I want to show you that we can have multiple clients running connected to a DataSnap server. Now the ID can only debug one at a time, right? So that's why I'm running without debug. So there's two different clients, each that can get the server date and time. They can open up the client, the country table, right? They can read data from the department table, and this one can read data from the department table. So you have lots of clients connected in, right? Now, since this is server-side support, there can be some side effects. So here I've clicked on this client, set the department order by to order by the department ID. So when I click this button, it'll give me departments by their department ID. If I go over here and I say get department, it'll do the same thing because we've now set on the server side the order by flag So all the clients will get that view, and you can have battles over who gets the control over setting the order by. So now it's by name. This person changes it back. Right? So you have to pay attention. If you're going to do server-side support, it's up to you to decide whether you want to keep track of which clients have set what states, or you can just let the client set the state, and then all the clients will live within that. We can have callbacks. So what this example is, it's run the gback command, which is the backup command from Interbase on the database, where well, let's take a look at the code. That's probably the best way to do it. Let's go look at main form. Let's go to the callback, start backup. It says, okay, we're going to create a message callback, and it's going to take JSON value of a function. And then we're going to take the JSON object, we're going to pull it apart, and as gback calls us back with the lines of output coming from the gback command, which is running wherever our DataSnap server is running, we're going to pull the message as a string that's coming from the JSON packets, right? Here's the JSON string value. We're going to take that and we're going to add it to the memo. And so that's what you saw happening. Every time the server got some console output from gback, it sent it back to us and we displayed it as it was happening via the asynchronous callback that we registered up here at the beginning of this button handler, right? And then the result, we start the backup, and then we listen for the JSON packets coming back from the server and display them in the client user interface. All right? And we can build clients for DataSnap server, for this DataSnap server in other languages as well. So let's just go into the start page. I've already got one here. So here's an ASP.NET client. So maybe your customer tells you, I need the server to be an ASP.NET server, but I don't care what you build the client in. So you can have your choice. Here's the design of our ASP.NET application. We have the login part. We have the reading part that'll display a grid panel of rows coming back from our database. And we can also set up a grid here where we'll use a SQL data source to populate information in this grid control. And we've got full support for all the things you can do in an ASP.NET application, logins, AJAX extensions, and so on. Right? So look, we've got the DataSnap server running over here. Let's run this ASP.NET client. So we'll log in, and now we're logged in. It says user is authorized. We didn't make a mistake. We can call the interface for DBX Reader to get the departments, and we can also pass a SQL statement and populate a grid with headings and spacing and all of those kinds of things. And we can also go down here and create new departments, add new departments to the database and add their department ID. Right? Okay. Same thing in RadPHP. We've got a client here, which is DataSnap PHP client. And the server methods are going to come from by calling into our interface to get the server methods. So it'll get the count of the server methods that are available through the interface, and it will display them as part of a master page create. So let's go ahead and run this PHP. Remember, our Delphi DataSnap server is running in the back. So let's go and let's put in a bad login. It'll tell us it's invalid. Let's put in a good login. Right, and again, it's calling an interface from PHP code to the DataSnap server, passing it the username and password, getting the result back. And here now we've logged in successfully. So it populates this menu with our server method. So here, one of the server methods is just a list of department. This is now a template on a master page in PHP of the department number, department head, and all the other fields that are down there, and applied some styles to it as well. So there's a PHP client. We can have a JavaScript client as well. I showed you the DataSnap Delphi client. Here's a DataSnap unit test client. So let's run this one. So this is we said file new. We wanted to build a unit test project, and then we specified the methods that we wanted to call as part of our unit test. It builds for us. We could tell the wizard that we want a graphical look or just a commit console look to it. So we'll run all the unit tests. Most of them are green. It was expected that this test should fail. I tried to add a user that's already online, so I wanted to make sure that the logic would test for that in my add user method that I called to send new users over to the DataSnap server. So I expected that to fail, but all the other tests returned the right result. And again, that's using DUnit. We also have a C++ builder client. So here's a C++ builder client, log in, get the server date and time. Here's open up the table of country and currency. Let's read data by department. We'll set the order by ID. And again, this is just a C++ builder client interface where all the functionality other than the user interface part is happening on the Delphi DataSnap server. And again, I can build DataSnap servers in C++ builder as well. All right, one last example, and then we'll get to Q&A. I'm going to open up this thing called Fishback Indy. And what this is it's a Fishback's DataSnap server that's running as an executable, and it's going to listen on an HTTP port, in this case port 8089, and then I can launch a browser from this application interface. I can just start and stop the DataSnap server and have other clients that are going to call the interfaces of my DataSnap server. On the web module, I've got a DataSnap server. I've got a server class which is doing session lifecycle. I've got a web dispatcher, and that's going to take REST calls through a port, in my case 8089, and then I'll dispatch those. And then I have a page producer, an HTML page producer. I've got a proxy generator that'll generate the interfaces for JavaScript and HTML. In this case, the writer. Here's the different writers. I've got a JavaScript, a Delphi REST, a Delphi through DB Express, a C Builder through REST, a C Builder through DB Express, because the whole DataSnap technology is built on top of our DB Express framework that we also use for databases. So the notions are kind of the same. Think stored procedures, think remote method. And then Delphi Prism comes with a proxy generator, and PHP comes with a proxy generator that'll go and get the interfaces of the server class. Let's go and look at the server methods. So each of the proxy generators for Delphi Prism, that's with Delphi Prism, for RadPHP with PHP, and for Delphi and C++, and for JavaScript, will read the public interface of my server methods, and then it will give us the interfaces to call these different methods and do things with them. In this case, since I'm building a JavaScript web client, JavaScript code, because it's a web module that's associated with our DataSnap server, it's actually building the JavaScript for me on the fly. So for example, I've got the server function. All this JavaScript code is generated by the DataSnap proxy generator for JavaScript. Remember, I had said JavaScript writer. Down at the bottom, one of the important parts is we get all the administrative interfaces, all those methods for administering the DataSnap server. I can do that from a client. You can hide those based on role-based settings using attributes. And for the Fishback server specifically, I've got reverse string, get keys, get image, get facts, get notes to be able to display the information. If I added other methods inside of the interface, then it would generate updated JavaScript code for me. I don't even have to touch that. I don't have to think about it. So if I run this on my system here, my local system, I can start the DataSnap server. Now it's going to be listening for calls on localhost port 8089. So here's localhost 8089, and I'm using the buttons. If we do a view source, the JavaScript was generated, and I have an HTML template. And then it calls the interfaces to populate the image, to populate the notes, and populate the grid line here. Right? I can also deploy this out to Amazon. So here you have it. You can hit it yourselves. Use 184.72.37.150:8089. That's my elastic IP address of my Fishback DataSnap web broker application. that's running on, I think I'm running on the Northern California data center, but you could put this application on a data center in Ireland, a data center in Singapore, a data center in Tokyo, and a data center in Virginia for maximum throughput, scalability, depending on how busy you are. But you can hit this today from your browser, 184.72.37.150:8089, and again, you'd be accessing my DataSnap server that is built. Oh, and it says, okay, something was changed in the JavaScript. I could add another function, for example, along the way. So that's building a file new, other, DataSnap server, a DataSnap web broker application where everything is going to be done. I don't need IIS. I could build something that would require a web server, but by having a DataSnap web broker application versus a DataSnap server application, I just build an application I deploy, and I can define the interfaces. Again, this JavaScript will get generated for me. So how do I prove that that happens? I can go in here and say function. It'll take a value, that's a string, and it'll return a string, right? And then I'll go in and say Control-Shift-C, right? And here's my function, so I'll just say result is going to be equal to, I'll just ignore the parameter and just for now return a hello world string. So we'll compile and run that application, right? Start it, open the browser. I can specify other interfaces that I want to call as well. Stop it. If I come back in the IDE, notice that when I bring up my server functions, now I've got in my list of methods that are available, I've got that reverse string and I've got that hello world. Again, that was all generated by that proxy generator or proxy writer that was over here as a component that I can use. And the writer is a JavaScript REST writer for the proxy generator that I have. So add your functions. The JavaScript will get taken care of for you, and then you can have, this is my user interface, just simple HTML. And I use the page producer component with Delphi C++ Builder to do the layout, and that's what did all the work over here. If I redeployed it, I'd have all the right interfaces as well. And that's a little bit about DataSnap, multi-tier, multi-language. Here's a Windows Azure demo. I've got a set of code here that goes out and has an ini file. So ini file, I create the connection to it, and then I go and read the string to get my Azure key and get my my password and store it into the connection info, account name and account key. And then if I do typos, I could run this one, and here's an Azure set of strings in the message queue. Its insertion, expiration date, its value. Here's a JSON packet. I've just got a string there. I think it's up to 8K in every message queue entry. We've got tables. We can look at different tables. I've got a table here with some name value pair, and I can create my own metadata, and I can query that metadata. We have an Azure interface unit for Delphi and C++ Builder, and a set of components for doing the connection and the queue, blob, and table management as well.
Okay, so that was a quick demo of lots of different things you can build in all the parts of RAD Studio. And again, with the promo running with TechXtend, you get, if you upgrade and or purchase a license for Delphi or C++, then we'll just send you RAD Studio for that either professional, enterprise, or architect edition. Here's the URLs that are short URL encoded, but you can also just go to the TechXtend website and search for the Embarcadero RAD offer and the Embarcadero DB Power Studio SQL offer. Upgrade to Delphi XE or C++ XE or buy new licenses will get you RAD Studio. And at the same time, if you add DB Power Studio for Microsoft SQL Server Developer Edition, you'll get a really special price. All that information is on the TechXtend website. Lots of URLs here, and the main one is to know that if you go to the RAD in Action page, on embarcadero.com/rad-in-action. You'll get to all sorts of videos and white papers and short form videos of the technologies that are available in RAD Studio and how to build real applications. Our application showcase has a lot of examples of companies that are using Delphi and C++ Builder to build applications, graphics applications, industrial, scientific, business applications. We also have a short video I did, a 13-minute video of our upcoming 64-bit Windows support for Delphi. So if you go to embarcadero.com/product/delphi/64-bit, we've got a video and some information up there about the upcoming technology for Delphi to get to 64-bit Windows. Lots of blogs and wikis with our documentation, and lots of code examples on the doc wiki as well for our products. There's also for Delphi Prism, there's a whole wiki devoted specifically to Delphi Prism. So with that, I'll turn it back over to TechXtend, and for any questions that might have come in or any questions that you might have. Back to you.
All right, thanks, David. Right now we've got one question that came in, and I think it was pertaining towards the beginning of the presentation. It just says, Delphi everywhere. Is this just the compiler or a subset of the VCL?
So everything, when I say Delphi everywhere, I mean the compiler, the runtime library, and the application platform sets of components as well. VCL is directly tied to Windows. So for anything Windows 32-bit, 64-bit, absolutely VCL. As far as next generation framework we're working on that'll get us to cross-platform, but you'll be very familiar with its with the way it works if you already know Delphi and the VCL.
Okay, and I think that's it for the questions actually for right now. Let me just double check.
All right, well, that's it. No more questions, Sarah?
Right.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, for attending. Again, to contact us, please do at info@techextend.com or at 800-221-7710. Thanks again to David, and we will see you again next webinar. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Bye.